Welcome to WT History. In this series, we list all the major events that happened in the world in a year, starting from 1776 to 2024. On January 6th, abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison took a bold step in the fight against slavery by founding the New England Anti-Slavery Society. Building on the momentum of The Liberator, his radical newspaper, this organization would become a cornerstone of the growing abolitionist movement in the United States. By February 9th, in the American South, the Florida Legislative Council granted an official city charter to Jacksonville. What began as a frontier settlement now gained formal recognition, setting the stage for its growth into a major city. But tensions were also brewing. On March 24th, in Hiram, Ohio, Mormon leader Joseph Smith was attacked by an angry mob, tarred, feathered, and beaten in a violent episode that revealed the growing hostility toward the new religious movement. Just weeks later, on April 6th, the Black Hawk War erupted. The Sauk leader Black Hawk, resisting forced relocation, led a group of Native Americans back across the Mississippi River into Illinois. What followed was a brief but bloody conflict between Native tribes and U.S. forces. Meanwhile, to the north, progress was being made. On May 30th, the Rideau Canal officially opened in eastern Ontario, Canada. Built for military and commercial purposes, it connected Ottawa to Kingston and would eventually become a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Back in the United States, on June 9th, Pennsylvania chartered the Strasburg Railroad, today the oldest continuously operating railroad in the Western Hemisphere. Though modest in scale, it symbolized the rapid expansion of American railroads. On July 9th, a new government role was created, the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, under the U.S. Department of War, tasked with managing the country's increasingly contentious relationship with Native American tribes. A day later, on July 10th, the United States Survey of the Coast was revived within the Treasury Department. This effort aimed to map the coastlines and improve navigation, essential for national commerce and defense. Then, on August 2nd, the tragic Bad Axe Massacre effectively ended the Black Hawk War. U.S. forces pursuing the retreating Native forces killed hundreds of men, women, and children. It marked the last major Native uprising east of the Mississippi River. Black Hawk himself surrendered on August 27th, bringing an official close to the war. Though he resisted U.S. expansion, he would live to recount his story in a now famous autobiography. By October 20th, the Treaty of Pontotoc Creek was signed between the Chickasaw Nation and the U.S. government. In exchange for promises of relocation support and proceeds from land sales, the Chickasaw agreed to cede over 9,000 square miles of land, marking another chapter in the grim era of Native American displacement. On November 21st, the state of Indiana saw the founding of Wabash College, a small liberal arts institution that continues to operate today, one of the few colleges in America still dedicated exclusively to men's education. But the biggest political crisis of the year came on November 24th, when South Carolina passed the Ordinance of Nullification. The state declared that it would not enforce federal tariffs from 1828 and 1832, setting up a direct challenge to national authority. The presidential election followed on December 3rd, with Andrew Jackson winning re-election in a landslide. But victory didn't mean peace, far from it. On December 10th, Jackson issued a fiery response to the Nullification Crisis, threatening to use the U.S. Army and Navy against South Carolina if it refused to comply with federal law. The nation teetered on the edge of civil war. Later that month, on December 28th, Vice President John C. Calhoun, a supporter of nullification, resigned from office, becoming the first in U.S. history to do so. Meanwhile, artist George Catlin began living among the Sioux in the Dakota Territory, documenting their culture through detailed paintings, a valuable record of a vanishing way of life. Elsewhere, cities were growing. Buffalo, New York was officially incorporated, and in Maine, the Cumberland and Oxford Canal connected major lakes to Portland's seaport, boosting trade in the region. Across the Atlantic, trouble was brewing in London. On February 12th, a deadly cholera epidemic struck, claiming over 3,000 lives. The disease would soon spread to France and even North America, highlighting the need for better sanitation and public health systems. But not all the news was grim. On May 7th, the Treaty of London officially created an independent kingdom of Greece, with Prince Otto of Bavaria chosen as king, a new beginning for a nation long under Ottoman rule. Just days later, on May 11th, Greece's independence was further cemented with the Treaty of Constantinople, which ended the long and bloody Greek War of Independence. Still in May, the Hambacher Fest took place in Germany, a peaceful but passionate call for civil liberties and national unity. Though it produced no immediate results, it laid the groundwork for future democratic movements. In France, unrest broke into violence. The June Rebellion, on June 5th and 6th, saw Parisian students and workers rise up against the monarchy. Though crushed quickly, it would later inspire Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. On June 7th, Britain passed the Reform Act, a landmark law that restructured the country's outdated electoral system. While it didn't affect Scotland or Ireland, it was a key victory for voting rights in England and Wales. Then, on July 4th, Durham University was founded, an elite institution that became a centerpiece of education in Northern England. But opposition to reform remained fierce. On August 7th, Archbishop William Howley was attacked by a mob during a visit to Canterbury due to his vocal opposition to the Reform Act. Just 2 days later, August 9th, in a dynastic move, Leopold I of Belgium married Louise of Orleans, daughter of the French king, strengthening ties between the new Belgian kingdom and France. On October 4th, Prince Otto of Bavaria was formally named the first king of Greece, fulfilling Europe's plan to stabilize the region after Greece's hard-fought independence. Later that year, conflict reignited. The Siege of Antwerp began on December 4th as French forces moved to drive the Dutch out of Antwerp's citadel, a final flashpoint from the Belgian Revolution. The siege ended victoriously for Belgium on December 23rd. Meanwhile, innovation thrived. The first Baedeker guidebook was published in Koblenz, setting the standard for European travel literature. Posthumously, Karl von Clausewitz's classic Vom Kriege on war began publication, shaping military theory for generations. In Switzerland, the global watch giant Longines was founded, setting the clock ticking on a legacy of precision and craftsmanship. And in London, William Sturgeon demonstrated the first commutator DC electric motor, capable of powering machinery, a monumental step toward the electric age. On January 13th, the Christmas Rebellion, a major slave uprising, was finally crushed in Jamaica. British troops and local militias executed over 300 rebels in public. While brutally suppressed, the rebellion accelerated Britain's movement toward abolition. On February 6th, Swan River Colony was renamed Western Australia as Britain continued its expansion across the continent. Just 6 days later, on February 12th, Ecuador annexed the Galapagos Islands, a move that would later take on greater significance with the arrival of a certain young scientist. Speaking of which, on February 28th, Charles Darwin and the crew of HMS Beagle reached South America for the first time, the beginning of a voyage that would transform biology. On May 10th, Egyptian forces, supported by Maronites, captured the fortified city of Acre after a brutal 7-month siege, expanding Egyptian control at the expense of the Ottoman Empire. Meanwhile, in Chile, on May 16th, Juan Godoy discovered the silver outcrops of Chañarcillo, sparking a silver rush that would power Chile's economy for years. On July 1st, British merchants founded Jardine Matheson in Canton, China, a trading house that would become a global conglomerate with deep ties to the Opium Wars. On December 21st, Egyptian forces scored a decisive victory over the Ottoman army at the Battle of Konya, placing Egypt in firm control of central Anatolia. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to follow the next chapter of history coming up in 1833.